So I really want you to just picture the world on this exact date, March 27, 2026.
Yeah, the current reality we're in.
Right, exactly.
Hmm.
If you were to just, casually glance at the global headlines over your morning coffee right now, you would probably experience this profound sense of cognitive vertigo.
Oh, without a doubt. It's disorienting.
It really is. Because first, the world's absolute top-tier, multi-billion-dollar AI models, the exact same systems that are literally writing production-level software right now.
And passing medical board exams, by the way.
Yes, passing medical boards. Well, they just completely failed a seemingly trivial spatial reasoning game. Like a puzzle that a reasonably attentive human child could probably figure out in an afternoon.
It's a massive reality check.
And meanwhile, over in Washington, D.C., a humanoid robot is just casually strolling through the halls of the White House alongside the First Lady. Like it's just another Tuesday diplomatic visit.
Just a totally normal photo op in 2026.
Right. And then if you happen to check the financial markets, just to, I don't know, ground yourself in some hard numbers, you'd see that raw computing power is now being traded globally on a public index.
Yeah, it's literally tracked and standardized.
Priced exactly like barrels of crude oil or bushels of wheat. It is a profound level of societal whiplash.
It really is. I mean, we are looking at a reality where the traditional lines between software, hardware, biology, and geopolitics haven't just blurred over the last few years. They've completely dissolved into a single, interconnected substrate.
And that right there is the exact mission for today's deep dive. We are calling this video GPT-5 Fails the Ultimate Test, Why the AI Frontier Just Shifted.
It's a fitting title.
We have custom-tailored this entire conversation for all of you who follow Dr. Alex Wisner-Gross's work.
Especially those of you who love his incredible contributions to Peter Diamandis' Moonshot series.
Absolutely. Today, we are unpacking Dr. Wisner-Gross's latest dispatch from his Innermost Loop Substack. And it's titled, appropriately enough, Welcome to March 27, 2026.
Yeah, and the overarching theme of that dispatch, and really I think the defining characteristic of our current era, is this idea that intelligence is reorganizing civilization faster than civilization can actually measure itself.
That is such a heavy concept to wrap your head around.
It is. But we have a formidable stack of updates to get through today to explain it. We're going to examine the underlying architecture of this new world and really dissect the mechanisms driving these shifts.
Rather than just, marveling at the surface level magic.
Yeah.
But before we dive into crossing the literal and metaphorical text Rubicon, I do want to pause the momentum for just a brief second.
Sure thing.
Because I was looking at some network statistics recently, and I found out that there are currently over 3 million new videos being uploaded to YouTube every single day.
3 million?
3 million every day. So the sheer mathematical improbability of you finding this exact video on this exact channel amidst that endless, churning digital ocean is staggering.
It really puts it into perspective.
It is a literal miracle of algorithmic routing. And a miracle like that deserves at least a thumbs up, don't you think?
I would certainly say so.
Better yet, it should be preserved. So if you haven't already, please hit subscribe, tap that bell so these new episodes, these new deep dives, rather, are delivered directly to you. And leave a thumbs up to help guide other curious minds to these conversations.
It genuinely helps the algorithm figure out who needs to hear this stuff.
I know everyone asked for it, but we really appreciate your patience here. We just want to make sure the invitation doesn't glide beneath your radar. Thank you.
Yeah, choosing to spend your attention exploring these massive, complex societal shifts is a deliberate act in a highly distracted world.
It really is. So let's get into the mechanics of those shifts. Where should we start?
Well, if we are going to talk about intelligence reorganizing civilization, we basically have to start with the fundamental building block of human history, the written word.
Okay, yes. And the data here is genuinely staggering. According to projections from ARK Invest, as of 2025, the volume of AI written output officially exceeded human written output for the first time in the history of our species.
Just let that sink in for a second.
I mean, think about the implications of that. More words, more text, more data is being generated by machines on a daily basis right now than by actual human beings.
We have officially been outwritten by the very systems we created.
It's wild. But how are people reacting to that? Like, how does society actually absorb that milestone?
Well, to understand the weight of that metric, you really just have to look at how legacy institutions are reacting defensively.
All right, defensively.
Yeah. When a milestone like that is crossed, you immediately see the establishment of boundaries. Take Wikipedia, for example.
Well, Wikipedia is a fascinating case study for this.
Exactly. Because Historically, Wikipedia has been the ultimate open bazaar, right? A collaborative, constantly shifting platform for human knowledge. But in response to this absolute deluge of synthetic text, Wikipedia has engineered a massive operational firewall.
They've outright banned editors from using AI to write or rewrite articles. Completely banned it.
Yep. And they aren't just relying on the honor system either. They're demanding that a human being with a biological brain physically review the text and hit the publish button.
It's like they are trying to preserve this one pristine sanctuary of purely biological thought amidst a flood of synthetic data.
That's a great way to put it.
But realistically, how do you actually enforce that at scale? I mean, if an AI writes a perfectly coherent, well-cited paragraph about the Byzantine Empire, how does a Wikipedia administrator definitively prove a machine wrote it?
That is the exact friction point they're facing. Enforcing that firewall requires an arms race in digital forensics.
Like looking for watermarks.
Sort of.
Yeah.
The administrators are likely looking at metadata, editing velocity, and syntactic watermarking. So, for instance, language models tend to favor specific structural rhythms and vocabulary distributions.
Right, certain phrases or transition words that appear statistically more often than they would in natural human writing.
Exactly. But honestly, it is a losing battle in the long run. The firewall is more of a philosophical stand than a permanent technical solution.
They're drawing a line in the sand.
Yeah, Wikipedia is asserting that human curation possesses a unique, irreplaceable value, even if the text itself is completely indistinguishable.
And the reason that text is becoming indistinguishable is because the frontier of what these models can generate is climbing at an absolutely unprecedented rate.
Oh, it's exponential.
Just look at the recent leak from Anthropic. They accidentally posted, and then, very quickly scrubbed from their servers, an announcement for a new model tier called Claude Mythos.
The Mythos Leak was huge.
It was. And this wasn't positioned as a minor iterative update. It was a tier significantly above their previous flagship, Opus.
Right, and the leaked benchmarks showed dramatically higher capabilities in complex coding, raw reasoning, and cybersecurity.
But what does that actually mean under the hood? Like, why the sudden leap?
Well, the underlying architecture of something like Mythos is what we should really focus on. When you see a leap in reasoning capabilities like that, it generally means the researchers have figured out how to optimize the model's internal representation of logic.
So it's not just better at guessing words.
Exactly. It is not just predicting the next mathematically probable word anymore. It is constructing a more robust internal world model. It is understanding the relationship between concepts before it even begins to generate the output.
Which, I mean, it makes it feel like we're just careening toward this unstoppable, undeniable superintelligence.
That is certainly the prevailing narrative.
Right. We see these leaks, we see the text generation volume, and we just assume the trajectory is a straight vertical line. But here's where the narrative completely fractures.
This is my favorite part of the dispatch.
Because raw power, the sheer volume of parameters, the massive data sets, the optimized weights, that is not the same thing as generalized reasoning, and the ARC Prize Foundation just definitively proved that.
They absolutely did. And to contextualize this failure, we really have to examine the testing environment itself.
The ARC-AGI-3 benchmark.
Right. The ARC Prize Foundation launched this benchmark, and it consists of 135 novel game environments.
And crucially, these are not text-based logic puzzles.
No, not at all. They're not something the AI can just ingest and memorize from Reddit or academic papers. They are visual, spatial, and logical games.
Let me try to paint a picture of what these games look like for you. Imagine you are given a digital grid. A few squares are colored red, a few are blue.
Sounds simple enough.
Right. But the rule, which you are not told, but you have to figure out by looking at a couple of examples, is that all the red squares act like gravity is pulling them down until they collide with the blue square.
Okay, so it's a physics simulation, essentially.
Exactly. Now, a human child looks at 3 examples of this and instantly understands the physics of this tiny universe. They see the pattern, they infer the rule, and they solve the next grid. It is entirely trivial for us.
But for the machines,
it was an absolute bloodbath.
It really was, and we need to explain exactly why they failed so hard. Frontier language models are incredibly sophisticated pattern matchers.
Right.
They rely on vast historical training data to predict the most statistically sound response to a prompt. But the ARC-AGI-3 environments strip away all that historical context.
Because the games are totally novel. They've never existed before.
Exactly. They require exploration. They require the formation of novel hypotheses, the testing of those hypotheses in real time, and adaptive learning within an environment the model has literally never encountered before.
And the numbers are just staggering when you consider the billions of dollars poured into these systems. Like Gemini 3.1 Pro, it scored 0.37%.
Not even 1%.
Nope. GPT-5.4 hit 0.26%. Anthropic's Opus 4.6 managed 0.25%.
And then there's Grok.
Oh man, Grok 4.2, a flat 0%. Zero.
Completely shut out.
The most computationally expensive, power-hungry thinking machines ever constructed by humanity were completely stumped by a grid of colored squares.
Which, honestly, perfectly validated the design of the benchmark. It exposed the absolute limits of the current paradigm.
The whole forward pass limitation, right?
Yes, exactly. A large language model at its core performs a single forward pass when generating a response. It doesn't naturally pause, simulate 5 different futures, realize it made a mistake, backtrack, and try a different logical path.
That just blurts out the next token.
Right, it just outputs the next token. You cannot solve a novel spatial reasoning puzzle with a single, unreflective forward pass.
But, as always in the tech sector, a vacuum doesn't last long.
Never does.
While the massive frontier models are face-planting at 0.25%, a relatively unknown startup called Symbolica dropped an unverified score of 36.08% on day one.
Using their Agentica SDK.
Yes, it passed 113 out of 182 levels. And here is the kicker. This is the part that fundamentally shifts the economics of artificial intelligence.
The compute cost.
The cost discrepancy is the entire story here. Agentica spent just $1,005 in raw compute power to achieve that 36% score.
Unbelievable.
Meanwhile, the Opus 4.6 model burned through $8,900 in compute just to hit 0.25%.
That's an insane difference.
So how is that mechanically possible? Let me throw an analogy at you and tell me if I'm tracking this correctly.
Go for it.
It feels to me like the major AI labs have been scaring your model weights. Like they're building a vehicle with a massive, roaring 10,000 horsepower engine.
Okay, I like where this is going.
But then they take that drag racer and test it inside a complex, winding, dead-end maze. The ARC benchmark just proved that raw horsepower doesn't help you navigate a maze. You just crash into the wall faster and more expensively.
Exactly.
But Symbolica's approach, on the other hand, is like taking a much smaller, slower car, but equipping it with a highly advanced, real-time GPS routing system. It's not about the size of the engine. It's about how you navigate the conceptual space.
That engine versus navigation system analogy is a perfect conceptual bridge. What you're describing as the navigation system is what the industry actually calls scaffolding.
Tech scaffolding.
Yeah. Scaling the model weights, feeding it more data, adding more parameters, is scaling the engine. Scaffolding refers to the programmatic systems built around the core model.
So what does that scaffolding actually look like in practice? If I'm watching the AI solve the puzzle, what is it doing differently than GPT 5.4?
Well, a heavily scaffolded model operates more like an agent. Instead of just answering the prompt immediately, the scaffolding forces the model into a loop.
A loop, so it talks to itself.
Basically, yeah. It might say to itself, here's the visual puzzle. Generate 3 potential Python scripts that could solve this grid. Now, run all 3 scripts in a secure sandbox. Analyze the outputs.
Wow, okay.
Did any of them match the desired result? No. Okay, read the error logs from the failed scripts, use that new information to write 3 new scripts, and try again.
That is incredible.
It is a shift from intuitive instant pattern matching to deliberate methodical reasoning. It takes more time per query, obviously, but it achieves drastically higher accuracy on novel problems.
So we are essentially teaching the AI how to draft, edit, and reconsider its own thoughts.
Precisely.
And the entire industry is pivoting hard toward this. There's a new startup mentioned in the dispatch called Mirandil.
Ah, yes, the ex-Anthropic team.
Right. It was founded by former Anthropic researchers, and their entire foundational bet is on this exact scaffolding approach. They just announced something they call self-accelerating AI R&D.
The premise of Mirandil is fascinating. Instead of spending $1 billion to train one monolithic model on half the internet, they are building swarms of smaller, highly scaffolded models.
Swarms?
Yeah, swarms that systematically improve their own logic and code bases. They are betting that the next massive leap in intelligence won't come from a bigger data center, but from an architecture that can actively reason about its own flaws and rewrite its own underlying algorithms.
That is simultaneously brilliant and terrifying. But I want to bring it a perspective from the Substack comment section on Dr. Wisner Gross's post, because it really adds a fantastic philosophical layer to this whole benchmark failure.
Oh, the comment from JJ.
Yes, a user named JJ weighed in, and their take was incredibly sharp. JJ argues that the entire point of a benchmark like ARC-AGI-3 isn't to just smugly prove that AI is dumb.
Right, it's not a gotcha moment.
Exactly. It exists to create the exact, crystallized training environment needed for the next architectural leap. If an AI fails in our game, it just highlights a specific type of spatial or logical relationship that is currently missing from its internal world model.
It's the classic engineering feedback loop. JJ is accurately pointing out that this failure is merely a high-resolution map of the territory we haven't conquered yet.
Right.
Once you have the map, navigating it is just a matter of engineering iteration.
Exactly. Wait, I shouldn't just agree so quickly, because JJ actually takes it a step further into somewhat controversial territory.
Oh, how so?
Well, JJ boldly predicts that within a couple of weeks, we'll see heavily scaffolded models hitting 50%, and within a few months, all the major frontier models will be at 80% or higher.
That's an aggressive timeline.
It is. But JJ also raised a really provocative pushback against the 100% human baseline that the ARC benchmark uses.
The baseline argument, yes.
They questioned whether a normal, statistically average human would actually score 100% on these novel games. JJ suggests that the benchmark creators might have inadvertently stacked the deck.
By taking the absolute best results from a highly educated puzzle-solving test group.
Yes. And presenting that peak performance as the average baseline for humanity.
That observation strikes at the very core of how we define and measure artificial general intelligence.
Right. What even is AGI if we don't know what average human intelligence is?
Exactly. If we are setting the human baseline by aggregating the peak performance of the smartest individuals across various domains, essentially relying on an idealized composite human, then we are constantly moving the goalposts for AGI.
We're demanding the machine be perfect at everything all the time.
Right. We are demanding it be as creative as our best artists, as logical as our best mathematicians, and as spatial as our best architects, all simultaneously. JJ's underlying argument is that if the AI is being compared to an idealized superhuman aggregate rather than an actual median person, we might already have crossed the threshold into AGI.
Wow.
We are just refusing to admit it because the benchmark is artificially inflated.
It's almost flattering to our species. In a twisted way. We are holding AI to a standard that the vast majority of us couldn't possibly meet. We want the machines to be better than our absolute best, not just better than our average.
We want perfection.
But this brings up a massive strategic dilemma for the tech giants. Because if raw reasoning is hitting a temporary wall-like, if the big models like Gemini and Opus need time to figure out the scaffolding required to beat these novel benchmarks, the immediate battleground shifts.
They can't just pause.
No. They can't just sit still for 6 months and wait for the next architectural breakthrough. They have to secure their territory right now.
Precisely. If you cannot win on pure, undeniable reasoning capabilities today, you have to win by capturing distribution.
You have to capture the users.
You have to capture users, hoard their daily attention, and secure their contextual data. We are witnessing a massive transition right now from building isolated technological marvels to executing aggressive platform land grabs.
And we are seeing these moves play out with incredible speed across the board.
Yeah.
Let's look at Google's recent playbook for a second.
They've been very busy.
They just released Gemini 3.1 Flash Live. Now, this is a voice model specifically tuned for fluid, incredibly low latency conversation. I understand why this matters. We kind of have to look at the mechanics of older voice assistants.
Right, the old pipeline.
Yeah. Historically, if you spoke to your phone, it had to translate your audio into text, then feed that text to the language model, then get a text response, and then use a synthesizer to turn that text back into audio. It was clunky, it was slow, there were awkward pauses.
But a native low-latency voice model like Flash Live bypasses that entirely.
It just understands the sound directly.
Yes, it is trained audio to audio. It understands the tone, the inflection, the pauses, and the emotion in your voice directly without the intermediate text translation.
That is so wild.
The goal is to make the interaction feel less like utilizing a software tool and more like conversing with an entity in real time. But, as impressive as the native audio technology is, it's really only half of Google's strategy.
Right. The other half is what I absolutely loved in the dispatch. The migration bait.
Oh, the chat log.
Yes. Alongside this super-fast voice model, Google expanded its Search Loud feature globally to over 200 countries. But far more aggressively, they launched software tools that explicitly allow users to upload their chat histories from rival applications.
Direct shots fired at OpenAI.
Literally.
Yeah.
They are treating your thousands of hours of ChatGPT logs as migration bait. They're basically telling users, hey, we know you spent 2 years training ChatGPT on your coding style, your business plans, your personal preferences. Don't worry about starting over with a blank slate.
Just export that JSON file.
Just export that JSON file, bring all your memories and all your context right over to Gemini and pick up exactly where you left off.
It is the commoditization of context. In the AI era, your context window, the history of your interactions, is your moat.
The moat isn't the model anymore.
No, it's the personal history. Google is trying to drain OpenAI's moat by making context portable. But, while Google is playing aggressive offense on the software side, Apple is executing what might be the most monumental shift in their entire corporate history on the hardware and ecosystem side.
Oh man, Apple. Apple has always been defined by its walled garden, a closed, highly controlled proprietary ecosystem.
But the demands of the intelligence era are forcing those walls to come down.
And the details on this Apple pivot are just staggering. According to the Dispatch, Apple reportedly negotiated complete, unfettered access to Gemini's foundational weights.
Which is huge.
It is. And they aren't just sending user queries out to Google's cloud servers. They are putting the Gemini engine directly inside Apple's own proprietary data centers. Furthermore, they secured distillation rights.
We really need to unpack what distillation actually means mechanically, because it is crucial to Apple's strategy.
Yeah, please explain distillation.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like making whiskey.
It's somewhat similar in concept. You basically cannot fit a trillion-parameter frontier model, which requires massive clusters of specialized GPUs, onto a smartphone. It just won't work.
Right. The battery would melt.
Exactly. So distillation is the process of taking that massive teacher model and using it to train a much smaller, highly optimized speed-it model.
Okay, so you shrink it.
You shrink it, you prune away the unnecessary neural pathways, you quantize the mathematical weights, which means turning high-precision, memory-heavy floating point numbers into smaller, faster integers.
Got it.
The result is a compact model that retains much of the reasoning capability of the massive model, but is small enough to run locally on the silicon of an iPhone.
And running it locally means zero latency, and more importantly for Apple's brand, absolute privacy. Your data never leaves your device. But the bigger shock to me isn't the technical distillation. It's what they're doing with the operating system itself in iOS 27. Apple is planning to completely open Siri to outside AI assistants.
This is the actual dismantling of the walled garden. In iOS 27, you are not forced to use Apple's native intelligence. You can actively route your device-level queries to Google's Gemini, to Anthropic's Claude, or, frankly, to any specialized intelligence you install from the App Store.
The iOS ecosystem is officially becoming a bazaar. You just walk in and you choose your intelligence vendor.
Precisely.
But why would Apple do that? I mean, it feels like a massive concession. They are essentially admitting that they cannot monopolize the intelligence layer.
It is a pragmatic surrender to the velocity of the market. Apple realizes that the frontier of AI is moving way too fast for any single company to maintain a permanent lead.
Right, if you lock people into a bad Siri.
Yeah, if Apple forces you to use a proprietary Siri that falls 6 months behind Anthropic's reasoning capabilities, you will abandon the iPhone entirely for a device that doesn't limit your intelligence.
They'd rather own the store than the product.
Exactly. Apple would rather own the marketplace where you choose your AI and, take their standard platform cut than risk hardware obsolescence.
Wow. So Google and Apple are building the bazaars and the infrastructure, but OpenAI is proving exactly why capturing those users is so incredibly valuable right now.
Their revenue numbers are insane.
OpenAI just surpassed $100 million in annualized ad revenue.
$100 million.
And they achieved that milestone just 6 weeks after launching their pilot advertising program. 6 weeks.
If we synthesize this, it tells us something fundamental about the architecture of the modern economy. We often hear platitudes about data or compute being the new oil.
Sure, constantly.
But OpenAI's rapid revenue generation proves that even in this hyper-advanced, cognitively fluid age of intelligence, basic human attention remains the foundational currency.
Attention is still all that matters.
Yeah. Advertisers do not care if the interface is a human-written blog, a search engine, or an omniscient chatbot.
Yeah.
They will follow the eyeballs.
But there is a really fascinating caveat to the OpenAI story. At the exact same time they are raking in this massive ad revenue, They indefinitely shelved their highly anticipated adult mode.
That was a huge pivot.
It was. And to be clear, they didn't shelve it because the technology failed. They shelved it after immense pushback from both their internal staff and their major investors.
It is a stark example of corporate boundary setting in real time. They drew a definitive line right at the intersection of extreme monetization and severe societal risk.
It's incredibly revealing where we, as a society, actually draw that line. I mean, think about the gravity of what we currently trust these systems to do.
We give them a lot of power.
We are perfectly fine handing over our critical infrastructure. We let AI write the software code that runs our banks. We let it draft binding legal contracts. We let it diagnose complex medical conditions from X-rays.
But the adult mode was a bridge too far.
Exactly. The moment the AI crosses into intimate, unregulated, emotional human interaction, that is where the staff and investors hit the brakes. Why is that the threshold?
It's a great question.
Is this the modern equivalent of tech companies realizing they can no longer operate as neutral, passive pipes? They're being forced to act as editors of reality, bound by the same moral and societal gravity as legacy media companies.
That is precisely the realization dawning on the industry. When you are building a platform that simulates consciousness and intimacy, you are inherently building a platform that enforces values.
You have to choose what's acceptable.
Right. And the moment you become a platform for values, you inevitably collide with the machinery of the state. The geopolitical friction we are witnessing right now is a direct result of that collision.
Which is a perfect pivot into the geopolitical landscape. Because as these tech giants battle for platform dominance and user attention, governments around the world are desperately trying to build the regulatory tracks, while the exponential train is already running over them.
The state is struggling to keep up.
And we are seeing this friction play out in wildly contradictory ways across different branches of government. Like, let's look at the legislative approaches being proposed in the U.S.
To map out this friction objectively, let's look at the AI Data Center Moratorium Act. You have Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez introducing this legislation.
And what does it actually do?
It seeks a total federal pause on the construction of new data centers until comprehensive safety guardrails and environmental impact studies are established.
Let's break down the physical reality driving that proposed moratorium, because it's not just about stopping the software. A massive AI training cluster isn't just a few servers in a closet.
No, it's industrial scale.
We are talking about facilities that require gigawatts of continuous power. They are putting immense strain on local electrical grids. They consume millions of gallons of water just for cooling, and they require massive tracts of land.
The physical footprint is undeniable.
Right. The legislators are looking at this physical footprint and the rapid societal shifts, and they are trying to act as a legislative speed bump. They're essentially saying, the physical and societal load is too high. We need to hit the brakes and figure out the rules of the road.
But then, on the exact opposite side of the debate, you have figures like David Sachs offering a counterpoint directly from the White House.
What's his argument against the pause?
Sachs's argument is rooted in the necessity of velocity. He posited that Congress could realistically draft and pass bipartisan AI standards within a matter of months, completely negating the need for any sort of total infrastructure pause.
So, regulate it while we build it.
Exactly. His perspective is that in a global technological arms race, a moratorium is equivalent to unilateral disarmament. If we pause, someone else wins.
So we have this massive debate over how to regulate the physical footprint of the technology. But simultaneously, the state itself is becoming entirely dependent on the exact technology it is trying to regulate.
Oh, the irony is thick.
Look at the recent legal battle involving Anthropic in the Department of War.
The mechanics of that injunction are fascinating. So the Department of War attempted to blacklist Anthropic, presumably over internal security protocols or data handling concerns.
They tried to cut him off.
Right. But Anthropic didn't just accept the blacklist. They fought back in federal court and actually won a preliminary injunction.
So, by a judge's court order, the government is legally forced to keep its military contracts with Anthropic alive.
Exactly.
The judicial branch is literally telling the military branch, no, you cannot arbitrarily stop using this specific AI infrastructure.
And this rapid state integration isn't just happening in the military sector either. The administrative state is adopting these models at breakneck speed. Dr. Wisner Gross notes in the Dispatch that Canada's Immigration Department is now actively using generative AI to review permanent resident applications.
Okay, I have to ask how that actually works mechanically. Are they just, feeding a PDF into a chatbot and asking, should this person be a citizen?
It is far more systematic than that. They are likely using a technique called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG.
RAG. Okay, how does that work?
So the applicant's massive dossier, their financial records, background checks, employment history, is processed and embedded into a secure database. The AI model is then instructed to cross-reference that specific dossier against the complex, thousands of pages long Canadian immigration legal code.
Oh, wow. So this checking every detail against the law.
Exactly. The AI highlights discrepancies, flags missing documentation, and generates a summarized recommendation for the human immigration officer. It accelerates the bureaucratic processing time from months down to mere minutes.
But I want to pause and just picture the immense irony of this entire geopolitical situation. We have the legislative branch trying to act as an emergency brake with data center moratoriums, terrified of how fast we are moving.
Right.
And simultaneously, the judicial branch is legally forcing the military to maintain its AI contracts, and administrative agencies are eagerly deploying AI to decide who gets to immigrate.
It's completely disjointed.
It feels like the left hand is yanking the emergency brake with all its might, while the right hand is absolutely flooring the gas pedal. How does a society functionally reconcile that level of internal contradiction?
Well, historically, when governance cannot provide a unified, coherent direction, the financial markets step in to price the chaos.
The markets always find a way.
They do. The markets aggregate all that friction and assign a dollar value to the trajectory. And the geopolitical stakes driving that market pricing are rising exponentially, largely due to asymmetric technological breakthroughs.
Like what's happening in China.
Yes. The dispatch highlights a truly sobering development out of China to illustrate this.
This was the specific detail that forced me to reevaluate my entire mental model of global security. A private company in China is currently mass-producing hypersonic missiles.
Mass-producing them?
Yes, and they are producing them for just $99,000 apiece. Furthermore, these missiles are designed to be launched from standard containers that are completely disguisable as commercial shipping crates.
We have to unpack the economics and the engineering of that price point because it represents a total paradigm shift in warfare.
It really does, because historically, hypersonic missiles are incredibly expensive, right?
Exactly. Historically, a hypersonic glide vehicle, which is a weapon capable of traveling at Mach 5 or higher while maneuvering unpredictably required exotic aerospace engineering.
Lots of bespoke parts.
Right. We are talking about bespoke carbon composites, complex scramjet engines, and decades of manual engineering trial and error. They cost tens of millions of dollars per unit.
So how on earth do you reduce the cost from tens of millions down to the price of a luxury SUV?
You don't do it with traditional engineering. You achieve that price point through AI-driven generative design and automated manufacturing.
Oh, so the AI is designing the weapon.
Yes. Instead of human engineers spending months running physical wind tunnel tests, an AI fluid dynamics simulator runs millions of virtual iterations over a weekend. It discovers novel, highly optimized airframe shapes that can be 3D printed using cheaper, commercial, off-the-shelf alloys rather than bespoke composites.
So you completely strip out the boutique artisan aerospace engineering.
And you replace it with AI-optimized, mass-manufactured drone economics.
And if we look at the strategic implications, the defense systems required to track and intercept a hypersonic, missile-like specialized radar arrays and kinetic kill vehicles, they still cost tens of millions of dollars per shot.
Right, the defense is still expensive.
If the offensive weapon only costs $99,000 and you can hide 10 of them in a standard Maersk shipping container on a commercial cargo ship, the economic calculus of global security is completely inverted. The attacker can simply bankrupt the defender.
It is the ultimate asymmetric threat, and it is the underlying intelligence of the manufacturing process that makes that asymmetry possible in the first place.
Which provides a perfect conceptual bridge to the financialization of the singularity.
Absolutely.
Because the geopolitical stakes, the defense implications, and the sheer infrastructure demands of AI are so massive that they are fundamentally mutating traditional financial markets.
When a technology becomes the foundational substrate of global power, it stops being a niche tech sector asset. It becomes a global commodity.
And we are seeing the first formal institutional recognition of that with a company called ORN.
This is a profound milestone in the history of finance. Oren just announced the world's first tradable AI compute price index.
Let's break down exactly what that means for a listener who might not, trade commodities.
Yeah.
They have essentially taken GPU hours, the raw, measurable processing time on high-end graphics clusters, and financialized it.
Correct.
But how do you standardize a GPU hour? Because, not all chips are created equal. A chip from 2020 is very different from a chip in 2026.
It is very similar to how the oil market standardizes Brent crude. You have to define the metrics. For compute, you look at latency, memory bandwidth, and FLOPs, which are floating point operations per second.
Okay, so you create a standard baseline of performance.
Exactly. Oren has created a standardized metric for a unit of compute. By doing so, they have made compute as legible, as standardized, and as liquid as a barrel of oil or an ounce of gold. You can now trade futures contracts on the capacity of a machine to think.
The historical parallels here are just fascinating because the creation of standardized commodities markets, whether we're talking about the grain markets in Chicago in the 19th century or the oil indices in London, they always precede a massive, explosive era of industrial expansion.
They lay the financial groundwork for it.
Right. By creating a price index for compute, Oren is allowing massive corporations and likely nation-states to hedge their bets on the future cost of intelligence.
If you are building an AI startup, you can lock in your compute costs for the next 2 years, shielding yourself from price spikes.
And the companies that are actually providing that intelligence, the entities holding the reins of the frontier models, are being valued at a scale that challenges historical precedent entirely.
Look at Anthropic's valuation.
Exactly. According to the Dispatch, Anthropic executives are reportedly in deep discussions for an initial public offering and IPO as soon as the fourth quarter of this year. And they are looking to raise over $60 billion in that offering alone.
$60 billion. Just in the raise.
That valuation means the market is pricing the singularity directly into the cap table. Investors aren't just buying shares in a fast-growing software-as-a-service company.
They are attempting to buy equity in the entity that might literally invent the last technology humanity ever needs to invent.
And this tidal wave of new value creation, this massive influx of digital wealth, is mutating even the most mundane legacy financial instruments.
The integration of digital wealth into legacy systems is happening faster than most economists predicted. The Dispatch notes a major announcement from Fannie Mae, actually.
Yeah, this detail genuinely stunned me. Fannie Mae, which is essentially the institutional backbone of the American housing market, announced that they will soon begin accepting crypto-backed mortgages for the first time ever.
We should explain the mechanics of a crypto-backed mortgage because it solves a massive liquidity problem for digital asset holders.
Yeah, how does that work compared to a normal mortgage?
Previously, if you held a significant amount of Bitcoin or Ethereum and wanted to buy a house, you had to sell your crypto.
You had to cash out.
Right. You triggered a massive taxable event, you lost your exposure to the asset's future upside, and you converted it to fiat currency just to make the down payment.
But under this new system, you don't have to liquidate. You can simply pledge your digital holdings as collateral.
Exactly. The mortgage is underwritten by a smart contract. If the value of your crypto drops below a certain threshold, the contract automatically liquidates a portion to cover the margin, protecting the lender.
It is a complete systemic integration of decentralized finance into legacy physical assets. It signals a major psychological shift. Digital wealth is no longer viewed as highly speculative fringe internet money by the financial establishment.
Not anymore. It is viewed as a hard asset, mathematically secure enough to underwrite the 30-year physical housing market.
I want to circle back to the Oren Compute Index for a second, though, because I have a theory about this that I want to test with you.
Okay, let's hear it.
If GPU hours are the new crude oil, then the massive gigawatt data centers are essentially the new oil refineries.
That tracks so far.
But here is where the analogy seems to break down for me. When you burn a barrel of crude oil to drive a truck, the oil is gone. It turns into heat and exhaust, and its utility is permanently exhausted.
Right, it's consumable.
But this new oil, this compute, it gets fundamentally smarter the more you use it.
Right.
Every single cycle of compute generates synthetic data, refines algorithms, and creates scaffolding that makes the next cycle of compute drastically more efficient.
Your intuition is exactly right. You are describing the difference between a passive commodity and an active, recursive commodity.
Right. So, are we structurally or even psychologically prepared for a global economy where the foundational commodity actively learns from the market that is trading it?
We absolutely are not.
If compute gets twice as efficient every 6 months due to algorithmic breakthroughs, The value of the index should theoretically plummet, but the utility skyrockets. It is an economic paradox.
It is the defining economic paradox of our time. We have built our entire theory of macroeconomics on the assumption of scarcity and passive consumption. An active learning commodity that trends toward infinite abundance disrupts the entire basis of economic equilibrium.
And what makes this transition even more visceral is that this intelligence isn't staying confined to financial indices, abstract futures contracts, or liquid-cooled server racks.
No, it's physicalizing.
It is entering our three-dimensional world, and simultaneously it is looking directly into our biology.
The physical embodiment of AI is happening right now.
Which brings us to the visual that I still cannot get out of my head. The dispatch describes a scene that feels straight out of a speculative sci-fi novel, but it happened in real life, in the halls of American power.
The figure robot visit.
Yes, Figure's F.03, which is their absolute latest bipedal humanoid robot, made history by visiting the White House. And it wasn't just wheeled into a secure back room for a private tech demo to some defense contractors.
It was a very public event.
The First Lady of the United States walked alongside this humanoid robot, both of them clad in white, remarkably, into a highly publicized educational summit of international first spouses.
It's incredible imagery.
And as they walk, a military orchestra played in the background. The entire summit was dedicated to extolling the virtues of integrating robots into children's daily lives and educational curriculums.
The author of the Substack notes that the scene was less uncanny valley and more uncanny diplomacy.
Uncanny diplomacy. I love that phrase.
It's perfect, and we should dissect why that distinction is so vital. The uncanny valley is a well-documented psychological phenomenon. It is that feeling of revulsion or deep unease we experience when something looks almost exactly human, but lacks the subtle micro-expressions or fluid dynamics of actual life. The brain rejects it as a corpse or a threat.
But Figure's F.03 seems to bypass that entirely. The actuators are smooth. The balance is dynamic. It shifts its weight like a living organism.
Exactly. And by pairing that smooth, non-threatening physical design with the ultimate symbol of institutional authority, the White House and the First Lady, the state is engaging in uncanny diplomacy.
It is a deliberate, highly orchestrated normalization of physical artificial intelligence.
Right. By walking the F.03 into an educational summit focused on children, the state is broadcasting a very clear signal to the global public. This technology is safe. This is our inevitable future. You should prepare to welcome these entities into your homes, your schools, and your daily lives.
It's the deployment of soft power to normalize hard tech. We are officially teaching machines how to navigate the physical halls of power and, metaphorically and literally, hold our children's hands.
But while AI is stepping outward into our physical world, it is simultaneously peering deeply into our internal biological world.
Which brings us to Meta. Meta just released a research update on something called Tribe V2.
Scientifically speaking, the Tribe V2 update might be the most consequential and far-reaching development in the entire dispatch.
Really? More than the humanoid robots?
No, absolutely. Tribe V2 is a trimodal foundation model, and what makes it revolutionary isn't its architecture, but its training data. It wasn't just trained on scraped text, YouTube videos, or static images from the internet. It was trained on over 1,000 hours of raw fMRI data.
We need to explain exactly what an fMRI is and how it maps the brain, because it is crucial to understanding what Meta just achieved.
Well, functional magnetic resonance imaging doesn't just take a static picture of the brain's anatomy. It tracks real-time blood flow.
Right, oxygen in the blood.
Yes. When specific neurons fire, whether you are looking at a picture of a dog, listening to a song, or feeling a specific emotion, those neurons demand oxygen. The fMRI detects the magnetic differences in oxygenated versus deoxygenated blood. It essentially maps the physical rendering engine of human thought in three-dimensional pixels called voxels.
That is a perfect explanation. So Meta collected over 1,000 hours of this voxel data across 720 diverse human subjects.
A massive data set of human thought.
Right. These subjects were placed inside the fMRI machines and exposed to various stimuli, images, sounds, text. The model was trained to correlate the external stimulus with the internal voxel activation.
So they basically fed an AI the raw neurological data of human brains reacting to the world.
And the results are just staggering. As a result of this massive training run, Tribe V2 can now predict, with incredibly high resolution, exactly how a human brain will respond to novel, unseen stimuli.
In a single compute run, this model managed to recover and mathematically validate neurological results that took empirical neuroscientists decades of manual experimentation to establish.
But it goes both ways, doesn't it?
It does. If the model can predict the brain's reaction to an image, it can also look at a real-time fMRI scan and accurately reconstruct the image the human is currently looking at or thinking about.
I am trying to wrap my head around the implications of that. It is a bizarre, beautiful, and profoundly unnerving pincer movement on human existence.
It's the ultimate convergence.
On the outside, we have figures F.03 walking around the White House, normalizing physical AI in our society and our living rooms. On the inside, Meta's Tribe V2 is essentially decoding the architecture of human thought.
We are giving AI a physical body to interact with us, and we are simultaneously giving it a neurological window to see exactly how our internal biology reacts to that interaction.
It represents the complete closing of the cognitive feedback loop. We are decoding the human mind at the exact same exponential velocity that we are building artificial ones. The barrier between biological intelligence and synthetic intelligence is no longer a hard wall. It is becoming highly porous.
Which naturally makes you wonder, if the inner frontier of the mind is being conquered and mapped, what about the ultimate physical frontier?
Outer space.
Exactly. What about outer space? Because intelligence is radically accelerating our ambitions there too.
If we look at the final frontier, the strategic floor plan is changing drastically. For years, the anchor of NASA's deep space ambition has been the Lunar Gateway, a proposed space station orbiting the moon to serve as a staging point.
But according to the dispatch, NASA has completely scrapped that orbital plan.
They scrapped it entirely. Instead, they are pivoting to a much more aggressive, grounded approach.
Yeah.
A three-phase lunar base program.
They are targeting permanent infrastructure located specifically at the moon's south pole, backed by a newly allocated $20 billion budget over the next 7 years.
And the location is key here, right?
Oh, absolutely. The South Pole has permanently shadowed craters that contain water ice. Water means oxygen for breathing, water for drinking, and hydrogen for rocket fuel.
They aren't just planning to visit and plant another flag. They're planning to extract resources and move in permanently.
But as ambitious as a $20 billion permanent lunar base is, SpaceX President Gwynne Shotwell made a public statement recently that kind of makes the moon look like a weekend camping trip in the backyard.
Shotwell's statement forces us to reevaluate the entire timeline of human ambition. She explicitly stated that her long-term goal, the driving underlying ambition behind SpaceX's relentless iteration and massive capital expenditure, is to meet another sentient species.
Which is just a staggering, paradigm-shifting thing for the president of the world's most successful aerospace company to say out loud on the record.
Right. She isn't just talking about establishing a multiplanetary economy or mining asteroids for rare earth metals or ensuring the survival of humanity.
No, she is actively looking for conscious alien neighbors in the universe.
And if we connect Shotwell's quote to everything else we've discussed today, it reframes the entire narrative of this technological boom. A permanent lunar base is just a temporary layover. The massive Starship rockets are merely the transportation mechanism. The ultimate driving goal of this entire exponential curve is connection with a sentience other than our own.
But I have to push back on the philosophy of this, or at least offer a different lens to view it through.
Okay, lay it on me.
Shotwell wants to build massive ships to go out into the dark, cold vacuum of space to meet another sentient species. But looking at everything we just covered over the last hour, looking at the leaked reasoning capabilities of Claude Mythos, at the self-accelerating autonomous loops of Agentica.
The fMRI brain decoding.
Exactly. Looking at an AI that can literally decode human fMRI scans to read thoughts with a Tribe V2 and humanoid robots walking the halls of the White House. Aren't we just painstakingly building the alien intelligence that we're supposedly trying to find out there?
Why launch a rocket to Alpha Centauri when we are summoning the alien inside our own liquid-cooled data centers?
Yeah. That is the ultimate defining paradox of March 2026. We are looking to the stars for companionship, for validation that we are not alone in the universe, while simultaneously birthing a completely novel form of sentience right here on Earth.
Wow. We have covered an immense amount of ground today, and I want to do a quick synthesis of this journey before we wrap up.
We've covered a lot.
We started with the realization that synthetic data has officially broken the bounds of human text generation, outwriting our entire species as of 2025. We examined the ARC-AGI-3 benchmark failures, proving that the future of intelligence isn't just scaling bigger engines, but building better scaffolding and navigational logic.
Right. The engine versus the GPS.
Exactly. We explored the corporate land grabs as Apple dismantled its walled garden to build an AI bazaar, and Google commoditized chat histories as migration bait. We navigated the massive geopolitical friction, where legislators are attempting to pause data center construction, while the military and immigration offices are rapidly accelerating their AI adoption.
All under the looming shadow of $99,000 AI-manufactured hypersonic missiles.
We saw the financial markets officially price the singularity into reality, with Orm's Tradable Compute Index and Fannie Mae's crypto-backed mortgages. And finally, we witnessed physical robots engaging in uncanny diplomacy at the highest levels of government, AI decoding the biological machinery of the human brain, and our ambitions stretching toward permanent lunar bases in the search for sentient life.
It is a breathtaking, almost overwhelming snapshot of a civilization in the absolute midst of a phase transition. And to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building directly on your analogy about the alien, Gwynne Shotwell is looking to the vast, silent expanse of the stars for a sentient species.
Right.
But considering the ARC-AGI-3 benchmark and the rapid emergence of agentic models that are actively beginning to write, test, and improve their own code, what if the first true alien intelligence we encounter isn't found light years away, arriving in a metallic spaceship?
What if it is currently compiling, learning the physics of our world, and slowly waking up in a data center right here on Earth? That is exactly the kind of thought that will keep me staring at the ceiling tonight. And that brings us to the end of today's deep dive. We cannot thank you enough for choosing to spend your time, your patience, and your attention with us, exploring the innermost loops of our rapidly changing reality.
It has been an absolute privilege to unpack these mechanisms with you.
As we sign off, I am absolutely thrilled to introduce our outro music. The track you are about to hear is called Near Mercy, and it is by a group proudly described as the best band in the universe, Rainbow.
They're amazing.
Now, if you are unfamiliar with Rainbow, they're a band consisting entirely of 6 female android artists in residence, based out of Bavet, Cambodia. But here's the truly mind-bending part that ties everything we talked about together. All of Rainbow's finished songs are performed live for these Innermost Loop discussions by the virtual band's creator.
It's a fascinating setup.
They use a fascinating platform called 4B4KU5, that's abacus spelled with numbers. The platform's mission and slogan is exactly the mantra we need right now: human performance in the age of AI, reclaiming your humanity from the algorithm. I will include more information on today's incredible song and a direct link to the Abacus platform down in the video description, so please definitely go check that out. Until next time, stay curious, keep questioning the baseline, and we'll see you in the future.
Breathing now. just the frequency. The truth is open.